Shalom everybody, and welcome back to Insights in the Parsha of the week, Parshat Pinchas. And we're also within now the first week of the 3 weeks. May we be zochet to truly come close to Hashem, like the famous teaching of the Maggid Mizrich, Kol Rotfeya Hisigua Ben HaMetzarim. It's a verse from Eicha, Lamentations. All those who pursued her reached her during in between the straits, between Yud Zayin of Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. But he would read it, Kol Rodefka, anyone who's trying to run after Yud K, he's running to connect to Hashem at the highest of levels. Hisig Vav he reaches Vav K, the second part of Hashem's name, in these 3 weeks. They're the best time really in the year to really develop and discover a deep connection with Hashem. Parshat Pinchas has many topics, of course. We're going to go into the section that deals with the allotting the portions of the land to the Jews entering the Holy Land. Okay, this is chapter 26 in Bamidbar, from verses 52 until until 56. Okay, it's in the third aliyah of the parsha. So the verse reads, let's read it inside. La'el vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Hashem says to Moshe the following: La'ele, to these ones entering, techalek haaretz benachala b'mispar shemot. To these shall you divide the land, the Holy Land, benachala as inheritance, b'mispar shemot, according to the numbers of the names. So Rashi, la'ele techalek haaretz velo lapchutim miben esrim. To these who are over the age of 20. So, like the Gemara says, this is the Gemara in Baba Batra, page 117a. It's as if it's written leka'ele, like to those who are like these ones, who are over the age of 20, shall you divide the land. The ones who are 20 now, not the ones who were 20 when leaving Egypt, because the ones who were 20 when left Egypt, they died in the desert. So who's left now? Little ones who were under the age of 20, at the time of the Keter Meraglim, at the time that it was decreed that they should die in the desert. And these people were under the age of 20 back then, and they're now inheriting the land, entering the land. So they're over the age of 20. So Rashi points out again, not to those under the age of 20, and he says an interesting point, Rashi. Even if in the interim between this now counting and allotting the land to inheritance, which is happening still in like the land of Moab before the Jews entering the Holy Land. Okay, even if now in between that time plot and the actual dividing of the land, which takes time. So even if in that time one of the children would turn 20 before actually getting the land, chiluk haaretz, nonetheless, Rashi says, because it says Sharei Sheva Shanim Kavshu, because it took 7 years to conquer, Vesheva Chalku, and 7 years to divide, so it's 14 years. So even if in those 14 years one of these children reached the age of 20 after this incident now in the Torah of allotting the plots of the land to give them as inheritance, Lo Natlu Chelik Ba'aretz, the only ones who took and received a portion of the land, Ela Elu Sheshmeot Elef Va'elef, only these 600,000 and 1,000. Okay, if one person, this is a bit difficult to understand what Rashi is saying here, and if one had 6 sons, they only took their father's portion. So we just have to explain this based on what the Gemara says there in Baba Batra 117a. Rabbi Akadosh, Rabbi Nasi, author of the Mishnah, he gives an analogy. You have 2 brothers who are Kohanim, Reuven and Shimon. Okay, and now they're entitled to get truma from the granaries of the Jewish people. So Reuven, he has 4 sons or 2 sons, and Shimon has 1 son. Reuven and Shimon, their brother, they send their sons. That means Reuven's 2 sons and Shimon's 1 son. So 3 boys. They send them to go to the granary of so and so Jew to go pick up the trumot, what they're entitled to. So the owner of the granary, he sees these 3 Kohanim coming. So he gives each one an equal portion. Because there are 3. So he gives them each like maybe 200 grams, 200 grams, 200 grams. Okay? So now they come back and became on the path of their fathers. the two brothers, Reuven and Shimon. Reuven and Shimon. So now Reuven takes let's say 400 grams, and Shimon takes from his son 200 grams. So that's 246, okay? But now Reuven and Shimon are brothers, and they have to divide equally. So Reuven really, from what he got, the 400, he keeps by him 200, 300, and he gives 100 to Shimon, or they just mix everything together, and they divided that he has half, he has 300, and he has 300. So even though the sons came and they got equal parts, they brought them equal parts back to their fathers. Their fathers then took everything and divided equally amongst them. So now it's no longer that Reuven's sons have in total 400 and Shimon's son has 200. It's each one gets half now based on their fathers, okay? So Rashi is going to go into this even more, quoting the Gemara, that this inheritance of the land is unique. Normally, a live person inherits the deceased, his ancestors. Here, the deceased, the ancestors, they're the ones determining the inheritance of the children. Where normally the children determine, wherever the children are, they divide equally amongst who's alive. In the case of the Holy Land, even though they actually received equally, but they would then give it back retroactively to their deceased parents as if, and then based on who they were, how many brothers they were, those who died in the desert, who left Egypt, that's how the determination of how much plots each person gets. So if Reuven had 9 children, Shimon had 1, so the Shimon gets a piece, Shimon's son gets a piece equivalent to all the 9 sons of Reuven. Why? Because Reuven and Shimon are those who left the Holy Land. Rashi didn't mention this yet, he's going to say it very soon. But when actually receiving the land, it goes by the actual living. It's an interesting thing. It's like weird. Why all this work? Why to receive a portion, a normal portion, equal to the others, and then have to, as if, give it back to the ancestors who died already in the desert, and then they determine how many brothers there were, how much I get. So why all this trouble, this hassle that I got a part, and then it goes back? Well, what's going on here, okay? I mean, Rashi will go on to say this in the upcoming psukim, but let's just read further on. La Rav, and he says, La Rav tarbe lachalato, like he said, according to how many there are, if it's a tribe that has many people, so you give them a bigger piece of the land. Each person according to how many numbers he has in his tribe, that's how much he gets, okay? However, the division of the land won't become just like, okay, let's do the census. It had to be done to a special lot, a goral. And this goral was very unique. Okay, it was done by Elazar, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, the son of Aaron. And they had also papers of the tribes, the 12 tribes, and then the 12 portions of the land. Okay, and he, before putting his hands, one hand in the name of the tribe and one hand in the part of the land, he already knew with divine inspiration what would come out. He would know which paper would come out in the right hand and which paper would come in the left hand without looking. So he would say to the tribe of Judah, this piece of land, okay? So already there was divine inspiration in the lot. Then he'd put his hands in and it would come out exactly like he said, Judah to this piece of land. And more than this, that wasn't enough. The actual pieces of paper would start talking. They would scream out and say, I, paper so-and-so, came out for the tribe of Judah, another other paper, this piece of land, that's for him. So it was like a precautionary, spiritual, supernatural event, this Goral, to make sure it's clear from all avenues that Judah or Shimon or Reuven or Dan, they get this portion of the land. Through the inspiration, divine inspiration of the Kohen Gadol, through the actual lot, and the actual calling out of the papers that I, so-and-so, came out to this tribe. Amazing, okay? This is Achbe Goral Yechalek et Haaretz Leshmot Matot Avotam Yinchalu. Al Pi HaGoral, it's Rashi learns it out based on the Midrash. Al Pi HaGoral. Al Pi means based on the lot, but the literal translation is Al Pi, based on the mouth, and that Rashi brings out. That's where we learn that the Goral itself, the paper, the lot, would actually call out and scream because it says Al Pi HaGoral Techalek Nachalato Bein Rav Lemaat. Okay. What we'd like to focus on is this point that only someone who turned now 20, even though if by the time in 14 years from now, before they actually give out the land and receive it, because they have to conquer the land 7 years and then give it out 7 years, that's 14 years. Even if someone would turn 20 in that interim, it was determined by now, before entering the Holy Land, that he has to be already 20. And like we said, he receives a piece of the land, but then he gives it back as if to his ancestors. There's a whole different opinions between Rashi and Tosfot and the Or HaChaim and all the commentaries on how exactly this went. But basically, it's the dead determining for those alive. And why all this, by the way? So the commentaries explain, Hashem has to keep his word. Hashem told the Jews in Egypt, I'm going to bring you out of this land and bring you into the Holy Land. That didn't happen. The Jews left Egypt over the age of 20. Those who left Egypt, okay, they died in the desert because of the golden calf, because of the spies. So what about Hashem's word? How about Hashem's word? Hashem said, I'm going to bring you to the land. So here, this is how Hashem's fulfilling it, that now retroactively the son receives a piece of the land, but it goes back to the consideration and determination of how much of the land to the one who left Egypt. So it's as if he's now a part of receiving the land. He now, because it's based on him, the father or the grandfather who left Egypt, even though he's now not physically here, he passed on, okay? But still, he determines how much his son or grandson gets in the Holy Land. So it's as if I have a part in this, or as if he's coming into the land, okay? This is how the commentaries explain. Let's try to go a bit deeper, based on the Likutei Moharan, lesson number 24. Eretz Yisrael, like we said in many classes before, is the land, is the place where the infinite light shines, even until today. But especially when there was the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy of Holies, which was the center, it is the center of the entire universe, like is explained in the Kabbalah, that when Hashem made the initiation of the creation through the vacated space, the hollow, in this creating this universe, so Hashem made a chalala panui, a vacated space within him, and then in this emptiness, he shot a ray from his infinite light, which is surrounding this empty hollow, which is circular. He sent like a ray of light, of his infinite light, which hit in the middle point. And once it hit the middle point, it bounced back. From the bouncing back was formed the entire creation. Where was that middle point? That middle point was earth. Which point on earth? The Holy Land. Which point in the Holy Land? Jerusalem. Which point in Jerusalem? The Beit HaMikdash. Which point in the Beit HaMikdash? The Holy of Holies. And which point in the Holy of Holies? The point where the foundation stone was made. It's called the Even Shetiyah. That's why it's called the foundation stone, because the ray of infinite light hit a middle point, being the formation of the foundation stone, that from there the whole world was created. Okay? So it's the center of the universe, and the infinite light shined, and continues to shine to the world through the foundation stone. That's why it's called Even Shetiyah, the foundation stone, because it continues to be the nourishment of this world and the entire universe, believe it or not. Okay? So Eretz Yisrael contains this. And the prerequisite, Rabbi Nachman teaches, to receiving infinite light in your life is you have to activate the Keter. The Keter is activated by being besimcha, by being joyous. Okay? In our context, the Jews who were under the age of 20 and were not involved in the chet hameraglim, in the slander and the speaking against the Holy Land and the complaining and all that, these young Jews showed that they were happy. I mean, not of their own doing because they were still young, but they were under the age of 20, and they're just happy young kids and teenagers, hanging around and following their parents in the desert. So because of their simcha, so they inherited the Holy Land. To enter the Holy Land, but with the prerequisite is, like we said, joy, that now leads to what's called the Keter. The Keter is this type of wall, a type of a mechitza, that doesn't allow a person to pass through. Rather, a person has to bounce back, and once bounced back, then he receives the infinite light. So, in our context, with the Jews entering the Holy Land, there had to be some type of a bounce back. The bounce back being that they have to be over the age of 20. Because when one is considered over the age of 20, he's considered as someone who's now dealing with major setbacks and bounce backs in life. As opposed to a teenager, also has teenage crisis and everything. However, he doesn't know how to handle it that much. Someone who's 20 and over has now the capacity and means to deal with any setbacks. And those setbacks are for the benefit, to receive within them infinite light. So it's considered Keter, which begins with the letter Kaf, which is numerically equal to 20, is synonymous with the age 20. Starting 20 and up, that's where the Keter, which also begins with the letter Kaf, becomes active in a person's life. So, like Rashi is saying here, only Jews who are right now 20, and not that they're going to be 20 before receiving the land. Why? Because someone who's 20 outside of the Holy Land entering it, he's showing that he's tasted already the difficulties of being in the diaspora. Because again, the light shining in the Holy Land is not like that shining in the diaspora. The diaspora has a lot of darkness and sadness attached to it. So a Jew who's over the age of 20, and he's one of those alive still, after all the tests of Korach and Bilam and Balak and the snake and everything, and they're still alive, they're still standing here, they're ready to enter the land. That means that people who held on with a positivity, that now they've reached the point that they're still alive and ready to enter the Holy Land. So they're showing that they're passing the test of the Keter. They're aged over 20, passing the test of Keter, and they deserve now to receive the land. As opposed to people who enter the land, who are still under the age of 20, and in those 7 plus 7 years, like we mentioned, of conquering and then giving out the land, they're going to be 20. It doesn't count because you're already in Eretz Yisrael. So you haven't gone through the challenges outside of the Holy Land to deserve the Eretz Yisrael. So those who are 20. So that explains age 20. Now, what's the idea of going back to the ancestors? If you're now at the border, let Moshe Rabbeinu, let Hashem give the command. Okay, all these Jews are standing here. Let them be the ones determining how much of a piece of land they get. No, they get, but then we go back to their ancestors, their fathers or their grandfathers, and then based on how many brothers they were, etc., that's how we divide amongst these children or grandchildren entering the land. Why the necessity to go back? Because that's exactly how the Keter works. Rabbi Nachman teaches in lesson 24 that the way the Keter tests a person is he's pushed back. There is a pushback. The idea that now I'm receiving an inheritance. Wow. But no, it's not the end yet. Now you have to give it back. What? When do we give it back? I'm here. No, we go back to your father who passed away in the desert, or your grandfather, who both left Egypt, okay, and they died in the 40 years of those who died in the desert. They determined for you. But why? That's part of the setback. That's how the Keter works. That a person who's like shocked, I'm so close, and then you make me that I have to go back with the risk, and I was go back in time, with the risk of now losing how much I get. Instead of 200, now I have to deal with 150 or 100. What is this? I got up something, and I have to give up a part. I have to give it up totally, and then get back possibly less, or for sure less. That is the idea of the setback of the Keter. Why all this? Why, like Rashi says, quoting the Gemara, the inheritance of the land is different than any other inheritance, and that the deceased brought the inheritance to those living, as opposed to a normal inheritance where the living are those who inherit from the deceased. Okay, like from A to B, here it's B to A. Why? Because it's Eretz Yisrael. Because the way of Eretz Yisrael, which shines the light of the Keter, this light of the infinite light, so the only way to enter into it is to have this pushback, which by the inheritors coming in, it was now that they received a portion of the land. They were given the allotment that they're going to get after 14 years, after 7 of conquering, severing, 7 of dividing. They have already their portion that's aligned what's going to be. Still, they don't determine. They have to now go back to their father or grandfather, and based on how many brothers they were, they determine how much he gets now. And he has to be quiet, he has to accept it. This is the idea of the Keter. We should be zoche, all of us, to inherit the land of Eretz Yisrael, and to not be pushed back and deceived and broken and frustrated and turned off by the setbacks that are required in entering the Holy Land. We should be happy with whatever Hashem sends us in Eretz Yisrael, accept it, and learn to grow with it. Bezrat Hashem. Shabbat Shalom Umvrach.